Hello, fellow aviators. So right now we will be studying on how to get our takeoff distance using the takeoff distance table of figure 41. Okay, so we have our givens to our right. For letter A, our given is negative 10 degrees Celsius of outside air temperature, 6,000 feet pressure altitude, 2,600 feet, 2,600 pounds, 10 knots of headwind, and 50 feet obstacle. So what you're gonna want to do is you look at your outside air temperature and your pressure altitude, and you're gonna want to find the point in which they intersect. So this is negative 10 degrees, and then you'll want to find 6,000. So this is 6,000 right here, and you're gonna want to find this point in which they intersect. So let's go and do just that. There we go. And then now let's go to our reference line and all the way over here. Okay, it doesn't have to be exactly straight because you're gonna want to pick the closest line, the closest diagonal line, and then look at your weight. You're gonna have to look at your weight, and you're gonna follow along the closest line all the way to 2,600, to the weight that you have. So since that's our weight, we're going to continue to our next reference line for our wind component. So let's just go all the way here. And then next, our wind component is headwind. So you're gonna take a look at this. We have tailwind and headwind written right here. What you're gonna do, since it's headwind, you're gonna follow the line that is slanted downwards. So right now the closest line that we have is here. So we'll follow this until we until we reach our value, which is 10 knots. So we're gonna follow this line until we reach 10 knots. This is 10 knots right here. Next, you're going to follow along the line until you reach the next reference line, and then you're going to check your obstacle height. You only have two obstacle heights, which is 50 feet obstacle and 0 feet obstacle. So since we have 50, we're going to follow the closest line all the way to 50, since this is 50 right here. That's 1,500. 1,500 feet. So let's continue on with the next one. For B, we have 20 degrees Celsius outside air temperature, 2,000 feet in pressure altitude, 2,800 pounds, calm winds, and 50 feet obstacles. Okay, for now let's erase all that we have right here. Let's go back to our outside air temperature. Let's go to 2,000 feet, which is right here, since this is the line that it follows. Oh, my bad. Since this is the line of 2,000 feet. So since that's the point that they intersect, you go to the next reference line, and you look at which line is closest, which diagonal line is closest. It will have to be this line. So this is the line that we're going to follow. And since our weight is 2,800 pounds, this is 2,800 pounds. So we're going to follow along this line till we reach 2,800 pounds. Next up, you're going to follow along the line all the way over to the next reference line and check for your wind components. Since we have calm wind components, we're going to continue straight ahead to our next reference line so that we can check for our obstacle. Now, we have our 50 feet obstacles, so we're going to be following the closest line that we have. That's slightly above 2,000, which we're going to give it 2,200. That's like around 2,200 feet. And so that's the answer. And then last but not the least, in a similar concept, we're going to answer letter C. We're going to answer letter C. Now, take a look at letter C and tell me what the outside air temperature is. So we have 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, so far we've been using Celsius, but now let's take a look at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So here's 60. So we're going to follow all the way there. Much better if you have a ruler. However, let's go all the way till we reach our pressure altitude, which is 6,000 feet. Okay, there we go, 6,000 feet. And then we'll continue along the line and look at which line is closest. So as you can see clearly, this line is closer. And then let's take a look at our weight. Our weight is 2,200 pounds. So we're going to follow the line all the way till we reach 2,200 pounds. We're going to our next reference line. And then take a look at our wind component. So here's the difference between headwind and tailwind. So for our letter C, we have 20 knots of tailwind. Now, when you look at tailwind right here, there's this line, imaginary line up, and you follow that line. Then since when you follow that line, it only reaches 10 knots of headwind, correction, tailwind, then you're going to keep going until the next reference line. It's only going to end up there, and you go straight ahead. Next up, we take a look at our obstacle, and we have 0 feet obstacle, so we're going to keep going straight ahead. Then there you have it, the distance for C. I'll just quickly write this down real quick. And then we have 1,300 feet. So that's that so far. So as simple as that, that's how you answer your takeoff distance, figure 41. So now we have our landing distance table. Now I don't know why I didn't do this earlier, but we have an example right in our table right here. And so we'll be using those conditions, and we'll be trying to figure out our distance, our ground roll. So right here, we have our outside temperature as 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Our pressure altitude of 3,965 feet. Our weight of 2,814 pounds. Whoa. And our wind component of 9 knots headwind. We also have our obstacle as 50 feet. And so let's take a look at our table. For landing, it's a similar process. You take a look at the temperature. You look for 20, and you get 25. That's the point of 25, since it's between 20 and 30. And you go along until you find your distance, which is 3,965 or nearly 4,000 feet. So that's 4,000 feet right there. Chin said 4,000 is right here. Next up, we're going to go along all the way to our reference line. Now, next, let's take a look at our weight. Our weight is 2,814 or basically 2,800 pounds. So let's go along this line until we reach 2,800. Next, we go straight towards the next reference line all the way there. And after that, let's take a look at our wind component. We have 9 knots of headwind. So, since we have 9 knots of headwind, we're going to follow this line all the way till we get to near 10 knots. Around that. And let's go straight ahead to our next reference line. And since this is the closest line that we have, this one over here is the closest line that we have in our reference line, we're going to follow that until we reach 50 feet obstacle. So right here, that's our final distance. Slightly above that is 1,750. So let's just estimate it to around 1,750 feet. And that's the answer for landing. So in essence, both tables have the same and similar methods of figuring out the distances.